Rated EC for electric chair.
Shadilay, fellow Kekistanis, I will share the experiences of me and my comrades in this diary. I fought in the 2016, the 2020, and the 2024 meme wars, and I plan to do so again in 2028. I was in the 88th Regiment of the Kekistani meme. We worked very closely with the 14th Filament, and at one point even merged into Task Force 148. We fought hard, and we fought fiercely on that decisive day in January of 21. Alas, we still lost. Many of us were captured as POWs until our God Emperor freed us in early 25 after another decisive victory in November of 24, which caused the demolitionists to retreat. Some might say we stood back, others might say we stood by. Maybe we did both. We only lost in 2020 because the demolitionists learned how to use blitzkrieg, cyber attacks, and propaganda, all to devastating effect. In 2024, they tried those same tactics again, but we saw it coming, and swiftly countered it with guerrilla warfare and Pingasakin tactics, which were devastating to the demolitionists. We were trained in these strategies in late May of 16, right before we were ambushed by a single normie. We managed to get out, but one of our two mentors didn't make it. It was around the time the world started to change for the worse. Harambe. I called him a bacon-loving seppuku enjoyer of the self. It still bamboozles me how a single normie can change the course of history with one bullet. To quote Captain Price, all you need to change the world is one good lie and a river of blood. I still cry every Tim. He was one of my true friends. One lie equals one prayer. Now, they shot the only person in the world who was willing to negotiate any peace talks, one day before the 24th anniversary of the ambush on the dual citadels. Some reports mention that the attacker wrote messages on his cartridge casings. He most likely got this idea from a 2008 movie, where in the opening scene, an agent of a shadow government shot up a warehouse where gangsters were staging a party in the middle of the night. The next morning, a detective noticed that the casings read, "The bullet was meant for someone else." The engraving on the casings in said movie also identified the name of who the cartridge belonged to. Many sick and twisted people, if you can even call them people anymore, that is, celebrated the perishing of this innocent man, just because they didn't like what he had to say. One of these biological objects, by the name of Hassan Piker, said, quote, "Let the streets soak in their fucking red capitalist blood," in 2018. Well before this event. To quote our future Congressman Mr. Herrera, when the enemy tells you who they are, believe them. Sometime in 25, we made a new enemy. They were an Australian insurgent eco-terrorist, not ecological in this case, but rather economic, organization named Collective Shout, and they were attacking our 69th Gaming Division. At first they only attacked our 64th Pornography Subdivision, but they soon spread their forces to our 69th Gaming Division as a whole. They had managed to gain powerful allies, like Israel, who ordered their payment processors, like PayPal, MasterCard, and Visa, who they owned as proxies in the United States, to threaten to not process payments on Steam, which was owned by our ally, Valve. Valve had no other choice. To protect their financial income, they had to remove the offending games entirely. In response, the Kekistani military, under the supervision of General Guidance Director, Augusto Pinochet VII, no biological relation to Augusto Pinochet Ugarte, gave the green light on Operation Fight Fire with Fire, where we launched cyber attacks on the payment processors' phone lines. It should be noted that they paid each time a phone line was in use, and it didn't cost us a single kekel, which is our currency here in Kekistan, for those who don't know. In 2023, the United Kingdom passed the Online Safety Act, which was proposed as a way to, in heavy quotation marks, protect children. In 2025, it has given their government the authorization to jail anyone for social media posts. In response, the Kekistani military, more specifically the Marines and the Airwave Force, are planning to launch Operation ISPND, which stands for Interconnected Spider Silk Pattern on Payment Domination, which is a fancy way of saying web freedom. We plan to give the citizens of the UK the supplies they need in order to be capable of liberating themselves, such as modified Luti submachine guns, ammunition, Kevlar, and discrete communication devices. The SMGs will be modified to have rifled barrels, select fire and safety capabilities, double-stack magazines, plastic lower receivers, instead of standard metal ones, as they are prone to lacerate the user, plastic hand guards, and fire 45 ACP instead of 9x19mm parabellum. It should be noted that the UK government is also using AI for this censorship effort, which Hideo Kojima explicitly warned us about almost a quarter century ago in Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. One of our best soldiers was a former McDonald's advertising mascot in the 80s named Mac Tonight before becoming disgruntled with their rival, KFC, who he viewed as inferior. He believed they were controlled by Communist Party USA, often calling them Kiev-friended communists. He also believed that the Africans were complicit in funding them. He later learned of Israel's banking proxies, and began to believe that they had systematically infiltrated every government and corporation on Earth. He became a parody artist in late May of 2007 when he did a cover of Hypnotized by Notorious Big, which he called Notorious KKK, and illegally changed his name to Benjamin Garrison. He would start drawing political cartoons under this name, but uses the alias Moon Man in his songs. Benjamin wanted to keep his identity as Moon Man a secret, but eventually his followers linked them together. Benjamin also explicitly stated that he was, in fact, not Moon Man several times afterwards, despite Moon Man repeatedly claiming the contrary. Later, he would convince his father to share similar beliefs. Moon Man's dad would later hook him up with friends he met on MySpace on Newgrounds, such as Cloud Man, an ex-German World War II soldier who had a tragic accident with an anti-gravity experiments Australian reactor near a canister of Zyklon B, which turned him into a humanoid figure made entirely out of it, and Starman, an invincible Soviet defector from 1985 who could not be killed, injured, or tortured due to his selfish genetic mutation, which made him have no nociceptors and made his cells harder than over 9,000 layers of graphene, but 1.3 times more flexible. They would all later volunteer in the 86th Eastern Contingent of the VMI of the Kekistani military, in which they would fight in the 2016 meme war, but be exiled off of the shores of Yortanbi by Susan Wajaxi and her army of non-player clankers. They had nowhere to go. With Kekistan being invaded by Normeastern, they had to seek refuge on the Greek island of Lesbos and go undercover and conceal their identities. Cloudman would wear a fursuit, to both keep his gas from killing anyone, and to conceal his identity. Starman would mostly not go outside at all, playing pirated Super Mario games and Super Mario fan games, but when he did need to go outside, he would make sure to stay away from anything that could even have a remote possibility of injuring a normal human. They would become fishermen and start a British meatball business, which they called Clasticos, and they usually served it with special sauce, which in reality was little more than onion gravy with lots of sodium phosphate to dye it white. In 2017, volcanic activity in the North Atlantic Ocean created a new island. The Americans, mostly Republicans, colonized it and called it Bitchute, the Moon Squad. Learning about this, arrived to the island on my father's 53rd birthday, on April 4th, 2020. They would soon start hosting concerts of their old songs. On May 19th, 2023, they held their last concert. They were MIA. In 2020, the Universal Napalm's Anti-Furry Coalition, UNAFCO, held their 37th annual summit meeting. In that meeting, they discussed who should be spared. They used the term fed, and who they would hunt down, or send to the nether. During the destined answer to the Beast's inquiry, which was planned for 2029, they debated with strong words in that staff room. Accusations flied about people in the agency being undercover furries. One German-Japanese man, well, I say man because he actually had Dila-Chapel syndrome, by the name of Hitsuna Mikolf, even had a seizure because he choked on a Dorito. He attempted to wash it down with Mountain Dew, but failed. Several German medics attempted to administer aid with the Heimlich Maneuver, but one of his ribs broke, and eventually died due to a lack of oxygen. Strangely, his death was ruled a suicide. They eventually reached a conclusion. Only those who contributed positively to Kekistani society would be allowed to live, such as Ken Ashcorp and Magnus Arkansas Doridian. On July 19, 2025, Astolfo of the 18th Freedom Riders Guild launched an attack the Trevor Project supply lines by incinerating a cache of 6 million Reichmarks located in a World War II-era vault deep beneath the streets of Berlin, which had been appointed as an emotional liquidity reserve for the LGBTQ+ non-profit. During the operation, eyewitnesses had reported Astolfo shooting the vault door 28 times in a replica of the Land Cruiser Rat wearing a light green flame-resistant maid outfit with magazine pouches and an identitarian lambda while shouting fiat currency is communist, before igniting the pile with a green Pepe-branded Flammenwerfer 35. The GSG-9 had responded to the report and attempted to intervene but were blinded by the built-in laser of his rifle and promptly shot in the balls by a 7.92 by 33mm Kurtz. The Trevor Project issued a statement reading, quote, "We are shocked and devastated. Those funds were going to be converted to Ethereum to launch our new NFT campaign, non-functional therapy." The German government responded with confusion, stating, "We don't even use Reichmarks anymore. Who in the Scheisse ordered the deployment of counter-terrorism forces?" Meanwhile, markets reacted violently. LGBT token fell 357% while Kekcoin rose sharply after being mentioned on /poll/. One woke economist on TikTok said, quote, "This is literally attenuation of income rallying, but like, with better eyeliner." In response, another woke economist on Tumblr said, quote, "What is there? Astolfo has since been seen fleeing the scene on a unicycle powered by gasoline illumination and meme magic, yelling, 'Crypto was a psyop' in 336 different languages." The Trevor Project is reportedly pivoting to a new donation model based entirely on gender affirmations and imaginary taxes. No one knows what happens next, but one thing is certain: the fur bunker just got a financial sedation. On October 20th, 2025, while defending the 4th Weapons Channel of the Foreign Board of Images Reconnaissance Team's vehicles, officially referred to as party vans, while they were investigating an empty quiver incident in Palestine, we would experience heavy fire from both the IDF and Hamas, who were advancing on our position. We were ordered to defend an Actinidia deliciosa plantation, and we had nowhere to retreat, as every choke point was guarded. I would eventually request an emergency CAS, and also say it again under its historical name, Broken Arrow. I was hit twice by the IDF, once in the neck and once below the side of my nose. Both injuries were non-fatal, and I was not permanently handicapped. I was flown back to a Kekistani hospital in less than an hour, where I would be administered anesthesia, and have some rather strange lucid dreams about Shrek. They would recover 2 entire cartridges, with the brass spent, but still intact and attached to the bullet. Dr. Herbert Ludwig said I was shot in the cervical vertebrae in the left maxilla and that I was at the Lilith Clinic. After my surgery, he said that I was expected to make a full recovery in approximately 11 months. I was then discharged and reunited with my mother, Winona Sartin Nuss Morningstar. The IDF later clarified that the presence of the entire cartridge was due to a new experimental weapon design, the ASH-24, which was advertised as more lethal due to 67% more bullet per bullet. It was designed and developed by a subcontractor, Focal Cease Scientology, and their former CEO, Raveen Tronkin, who died from hydrogen cyanide poisoning while handling a pesticide. Declassified documents from the supposed plantation show that it was an undercover Kekistani military base. Combat log, May 2nd, 2025. Psychological Operation Trans-Superuser Duar MRF route is currently presumed to be successful. Report from the Actinidia deliciosa plantation. Combat log, May 10th, 2025. Psychological Operation Trans-Superuser Duar MRF route is confirmed to be a success, as the deceased body of the target has been recovered from the Willamette River. Report from the Actinidia deliciosa plantation. On September 11, 2001, the government agency that protects Kekistan, then called American Lena, from terrorist attacks, called ADL Home Security, informed President of American Lena, Pepe, of the attacks on the allied United States, and on the 12th of September, 2001, at 5:56 a.m., he officially declared war on Al-Qaeda. American Lena was originally founded in 1986 by Kek's prophet Pepe, and was refounded as Kekistan when Mu took over in 2003. It should be noted that American Lenians still worshipped Kek. 13 years later, in 2014, the then allied anonymous Twitter account was hijacked by an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, ISIS. Anonymous was able to reclaim their account within days. Now furious, they gathered their forces and launched #Operation ISIS, a several-month-long meme bombing campaign, hoping to anger them, so they would be careless and act out of impulse instead of strategic merit. Needless to say, it worked. In May of 2020, Derek Oath Cleric Chauvin of the 23rd Empowerment Rangers neutralized a convicted felon. You may know his name, George Floyd. This action led to further lawless action by the domestic terrorists over at Antifa. In Kenosha, they attempted to murder a then 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse, who is a United States civilian and has no affiliation with any Kekistani military force, and wishes not to be affiliated, after he attempted to extinguish their fires. One of them said get him, and they started chasing him down the street. Mr. Rittenhouse opened fire after being struck by the mob. He fell onto the asphalt and one of them attempted to curb stomp him, before being swiftly neutralized. One of them started screaming medic, 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 not realizing they were trying to kill their medic. Two of the attackers struck by the 5.56 dirt instantly. One survived unfortunately, but permanently disabled in the arm. He was detained after the incident, found not guilty on all charges, and released. On the 12th of November, 2025, Valve announced a new hardware lineup, arriving in early 2026. Among them are the Steam controller, which I call the new controller, the Steam machine, which everyone here calls the GameCube, and the Steam frame, which was co-named as the Decade during its development. I plan to get a Steam frame as a late KK Christmas present from my father, George White Morningstar. I feel like I should outline our standard issue loadout as Kekistani soldiers. For guns, we have the STG-45A7M, a 7.92 by 33mm Kurtz carbine with Picatinny rails and equipped with an ACOG, triangle grip, and built-in laser sight, and the Block 18 CP match, a highly customizable 9x19mm parabellum machine pistol with a 3-round burst and semi-automatic function and compensator match weight, customizable with Lego bricks. For grenade is the omniversal utility throwable, which has dials for what you want it to do. Set it to X and it will fragment and explode, or B if you want it to act like a flashbang, or S if you want to cover your movements with smoke, or R if you want to spread fire. Detonation time can be dialed from 1.85 seconds to 12.25 seconds. For vehicles, we have the AH-88 Upper KKKE attack riflecopters, armored for Ferry 457 Italics, Panther Dragon XXVs, and the EKK Tenter points. It should be noted that the functional replications of the unproduced Land Cruiser Rat and the Green Pepe branded Flammenwerfer 35 used by Astolfo during his raid on the Trevor project were custom made for the operation and were not standard issue. In late December 2019, a Chinese bioweapon was unleashed. It was developed in a lab, originally planned to be an airborne vaccine for use in caves on bats. The project was taken over by the Chinese government as a bioweapon. It spread rapidly, causing a global panic. Big Pharma took advantage of this to create their own weapons, to both physically cripple the user and to mutate the Chinese bioweapon to be more effective. People were forced to take these so-called vaccines and wear ineffective face coverings to keep their jobs and to attend events. In a now censored report, 4C said face coverings keep the biological materials in them. Now he's saying to wear 2 of them. No wonder Joseph Roth of the bidding pardoned the dude, because they're both lying pieces of shit. I trust a can of Dr. Pepper to perform open heart surgery on me more than I trust that man to give me advice. In 2004, the fourth Lolicon channel was founded. The same year, they were found to be performing a massive misconduct, raising child soldiers. Because of this, the fourth Lolicon channel was disbanded and the Forum Board of Images got involved, becoming an established organization instead of a loose network. Anyone found to be involved with it was personally executed by Mood himself. In the year 2525, if man is still alive, Kek will kill all the normies in a flooding rain of lava. Mike Judgment Day, it is called. When the Dipper Pines enters that Taco Bell, shit will hit the fan. Or rather, the hazard suit. The government men took the liberty of relieving him in the bathroom stall. As for the most disgusting literature award, they think he's earned it, and they want him to not be proud of it, but to actively stop and fight that MDLA. In 2017, Marcus Notch person would post, quote, "It's okay to be white," which would eventually lead to Microsoft blacklisting him from the 10th anniversary of the very game he created in 2019. In response, on the 20th anniversary of Infamy Minor, the Kekistani military will raid the Microsoft headquarters and plant bombs during Operation Quad Nitro Creep Pelmeme. The bombs will look like Minecraft TNT and have a 40-second timer once activated. The activation code is 8675309. In 2029, Operation No Commie will begin, where Astolfo will pilot an AH-88 Upper KKKE to give members of the North Korean government and the Chinese Communist Party free helicopter rides, without a parachute of course. It should be noted that while Astolfo himself is, in fact, bisexual, which is legal, pushing it on others against their will is illegal, as it is not protected speech under the Social Awareness Act of 2019. The SAA 19 denotes that any person or entity who knowingly displays any flag or symbol other than those outlined in Sector C against any other person's will is committing a Class F civil violation, punishable by up to 10 days in prison and a 2-once ration reduction for the period. I should probably explain what a 2-once ration reduction is. You see, only the government as an entity uses kekels for diplomatic relations for other countries. Actual people use a post-scarcity system. In the PSS, there is a ration system. 30 needs per 10 days, 10 wants per 30 days, 15 services per 15 days, and 125 therapeutics per 60 days. Anyway, a Class F is the lowest violation. It goes F, E, D, C, B, A, and S. Sector C outlines that Kekistani iconography is an exception. The second commandmental states, if a well-armed populace is necessary to prevent crime and to keep the government in check, then the right to possess any weapon is in order. It then leaves clear instructions, no exceptions, as Founding Father Moot learned from the politicians in the United States. The intelligence agency of Kekistan, the cuckold intellect of Alfred, uses interrogation methods similar to MKUltra, called AK-ULSA. On an unknown date, the Argent beacon was activated by the Moon Squad, now under the name Moon KK Crew. The signal contained almost every song of theirs and could not be stopped. Remember this, folks, all girls are bi. You just need to figure out if she is bipolar, bilingual, bisexual, or just a bitch. For a time, our official Department of War chief was Shadman, as in Shadowley, until he was indicted on charges with similarities to the 4th Lolicon channel incident. He was removed, but because what he did remained in the realm of cyberspace, he was not executed, but all of the military bases he was in charge of went into a shutdown. We all want pedophiles subjected to AK-ULSA and lynched, but we don't compare line sketches to actual torture, either. The Lolicon Civil Protection Act states, all depictions and renders of three-dimensional lolis and shotters in a sexualized manner must be clearly fictionalized with 1. Crisp and clear CGI. 2. Features of the characters are exaggerated or under-detailed, and even for two-dimensional lolis and shotters. 3. Must not depict a real child, or anything that could resemble a real child, and all depictions and renders of three-dimensional lolis and shotters in a sexualized manner must meet manual review before being registered with a unique 2048-bit hash obtained from the pixel data. Shadman broke Rule 3. Filthy Frank was one of our best soldiers, even if his loyalty was in question. An immigrant from Japan, he didn't let anyone get the last laugh over him, not even his fellow men. When he says his motto is everyone gets shit from me, even myself, he's not kidding. He famously attacked one group you think would love Francis of the Filth for being Japanese, weeaboos. This caused a massive ruckus. People were throwing out accusations of friendly fire left and right. When Filthy Frank left us in 2017, we were saddened to see him leave. But then, he started an actual successful real music career. When Kek made Man, he did it on a timeline, not one poof. They exist now. You may have heard about the Neanderthals. That was one of those on the timeline. Kek started with one big bang, did some crazy shit for a few nanoseconds, then waited a couple billion years for it to cool down. You see, even he has to obey the very laws of the universe he created. When Kek made life, he borrowed matter from a different part of the universe, because he said that matter cannot beth createth nor destroyeth. In chapter 14, verse 88 of the Terabyte Bull. On April Fool's 2019, Big Man Tyrone officially resigned as president of Kekistan after being president since 2017. His achievements include taking much of Normistan's land and the nuclear proliferation of Kekistan. After the resignation of Big Man Tyrone as president, Kekistan suffered a 7-hour war for the seat. It was between Rajitanis, who had taken advantage of the resignation and invaded, and Chandler Kanalas, who were from our military. In the end, the Chandler Kanalas won. Peace was restored and the invaders were exiled. The new presidency was awarded, posthumously, to Aaron Schwartz, whose beliefs, personality, and quirks were imparted into software on a private machine in the Triforce office. His files are currently backed up on another machine and connected to the internet for his duties. Our nuclear emergency alert system is a 5-second 1 kHz sine wave, followed by a chiptune cover of the chorus of Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles, followed by another 5-second 1 kHz sine wave. For non-nuclear emergencies, such as weather, we use the beginning to the original Bad Apple from the PC-98, in the Sega Genesis Sonic 3 and Knuckles sound font, followed by a 1-second 1 kHz sine wave. Our offense condition is currently on theta. When a nuclear weapon is found heading in our direction, it goes to OFCON on us and we launch our own nuclear weapons. Our OFCON goes like this: OFCON V, total peace, no war. OFCON Fur, a little off put, a few minor wars going on. OFCON Theta, something is wrong, 1 or 2 major wars going on. OFCON Dub, prepare for unforeseen consequences, nuclear war may happen. OFCON Unus, you are beyond fucked, a nuclear war has already started. OFCON Null, Kekistan either has surrendered or is completely wiped off the face of the planet. I fear OFCON Null, even if it is extremely unlikely. If we go down, so does everything we stand for. There will be nobody left to teach our beliefs. Everywhere will be a one-party state, with no other opinions because they simply are not taught the things that would make them have another opinion. Anyway, the reason we're on Theta is for our involvement in the Russia-Ukraine and Gaza Strip wars. There are 14 states in Kekistan, those being Floydia, a peninsula from the mid-south, home to spots of swampy marshes; Endorama, a very light polluted part of the nation and the middle of the western region; Nextas, where most of the radicals and firearm manufacturers live; Arkansas Blade, named after its blacksmithing culture; Kalashni Fornication, where the gun fetishists live; Idiot Ho, where the potatoes are grown; Nuke Pork, a colony of Muslims and Jews. Violent crime between the two is not uncommon. Nigasigi, where the patriotic Negras came from; Utah, where the social media influencers live; Area Mona, where the pixel art capital is; Oregon, known for its uranium and diamond mines as well as the Silk Road; Ashkoptucky, where our little ponies race; Hawaii 3, an island 3 clicks off of the western shores of Kalashni Fornication; and Alaska, an isolated area off of Tibet mainland from the south, where the adult film industry thrives. We have a special operations group called the 420th Blazers League, who were used to kill enemy VIPs. They were most active in the mid to late 10s, but have since been scaled back due to lack of volunteers. They are field operatives, meaning they work in relatively close proximity to opposing forces, but mainly use bolt-action sniper rifles. They are trained to keep their peripheral vision unobstructed and use quick and chaotic maneuvers often. They only scope in if absolutely necessary and move around a lot. Because of this, they developed two techniques, the 360 no-scope and the quick-scope. One of our operatives even jumped off of a building, spun, and threw a knife upwards over a crane. When it landed, it hit an enemy agent. This kill ended the Screech offensive against the OP4, as they quickly surrendered in fear. At his request, his mother attached a camera to the knife's pommel. He captured the incident on the knife's camera. One of their training courses was on ammunition conservation, where they were taught how to kill 3 enemies with 1 bullet. During the course, the teacher said, "Oh baby, a triple," which soon became a common catchphrase. I will end with some miscellaneous stuff. Contrary to popular belief, Kekistanis don't like Nazis, despite our flag being based on theirs. Not because of them gassing Jews, though, you see. Nazis are socialists. Just because they're nationalists doesn't make them any better. Being transgender is very frowned upon in Kekistan, and is considered illegal. Upon receiving a tip, a psychological operation will be initiated in an attempt to get the offender to commit suicide. These have a very high success rate for our trained mimetic warfare operatives in the 76th Shitposting Brigade. In 2006, the patriotic Negras of Kekistan raided the Habbo Hotel. They famously closed the pools there, as they claimed there were biohazards in them. They also formed swastikas in the common areas with their bodies. Sometime in 2021, I was interrogated by a then opposing force for threatening their leader on a public forum, which, I will admit, was very bad OPSEC. Sometime in 2016, a mysterious entity known only as the Shadow Brokers emerged. They had managed to hack the United States National Security Agency's Cyber Warfare Division. Eternal Blow and Dandy Spritz enabled attacks such as NotPetya, which disabled infrastructure on a massive scale. Sometime in the early 2020s, the 34th Ruler Squadron maintained visual contact on the suspects of the Jayden incident. They were peacefully neutralized on the site of the scene. In the verdict of court record R-34.3, they created a new law, called the Real World Person's Avatar Privacy Act, which states, any sexualized depictions of fictional avatars, either 2-dimensional illustrations or 3-dimensional renders, that represent a real-world person or entity, must have permission from that person or entity to be published. No penalties were imparted on the defendants. Our national superhero is Vakman, and we don't even know if he has powers. Unlike Batman, he uses a gun, more specifically, an M4A4. He lives in the Vac Cave, and he has a supercomputer with 6 NVIDIA GeForce RTX 5090s, 12 Intel Core i9-12900Fs, 256 terabytes of RAM, and 2048 terabytes of solid-state drive disk space. In 2019, we noticed one of our non-discernible microbio-inoculators went missing. We later figured out an unknown rogue Kekistani soldier used it on Jeffrey Epstein. Meanwhile, at the 8th Channel base, the siege on the Christchurch Mosque was underway. This caused the Jews at Google to go haywire. They blocked all roads they owned to the base. However, thanks to the DuckDuckGo program, you can still access it through semi-traditional means. In the early 2020s, the Workforce of Arms Progression, WOP, developed a kinetic orbital weapon, called the Armstrong Mark I. Nicknamed Robs from Nog, which is a kinetic orbital weapon that orbits the Earth and, when activated, would decelerate at a rate that would cause it to hit its target, but not enough to not have a large kinetic energy impact. The weapon was launched into orbit by the National Aerial Gadgets Administration, known as NAGA. It is made out of Denton, a special crafted alloy made by WAP. It is manufactured from modified tungsten and concrete. In the mid-2010s, The 2 sieges of Tumblr were underway. They had stolen and modified a gaseous chemical weapon comprising mostly of oxygen. We arrived there by aircraft, and instead of opening fire, we used an incapacitating gas. They were still conscious, but couldn't move. We brought the bloody corpses of past enemies with us, and showed them off in an attempt to disgust and mentally scar them. We were ordered to not wear any clothing on us, for the same reason. Anyway, I'm off to the KEK Department of Veterans Affairs and Voice Actors, VA2, to collect my chicken tendies and good boy points. GBP. Sincerely, Captain Jacob A. Wages. Pseudonym, James T. Morningstar. Call sign, currency.